Welcome everybody to another wonderful speaker, someone who is very close to my heart. The amazing Steve Hickman is here with us to share all about self-compassion and how it fits with our World Kindness Day. He is the amazing author of Self-Compassion for Dummies. So I'm very excited to share with you a little bit about Steve. So Dr. Steve Hickman is the Executive Director of the Non-Profit Center for Mindful Self-Compassion. He is a clinical psychologist and retired associate clinical professor in the University of California at San Diego School of Medicine, as well as the founding director of the UC San Diego Center for Mindfulness. Steve co-developed the Mindful Self-Compassion Teacher Training Program and has participated in the training of over 1,800 Mindful Self-Compassion teachers around the world, including me. Steve has co-taught the 8-week and intensive MSc program many times all around the world and is also a certified teacher of mindfulness-based stress reduction and trains teachers of that program too. He is happily married to a very lovely lady who I've also had the pleasure to meet, and has 3 young adult children, affording him ample opportunity to practice what he teaches. So very warm welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for giving us your time and your wisdom. We really appreciate you being here on World Kindness Day. So we have so many questions, Barbara and I, both being teachers of mindful self-compassion, passionate about this work and how it can weave together and support self-kindness and self-compassion practice in our everyday life. So I think what would be helpful for everyone is if you would perhaps begin helping people understand the difference between self-compassion and self-kindness, even though they're sort of interlinked, but there's some unique nuances with that.
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. It's good to be clear about the differences or the similarities, I think. So when we talk about self-compassion, what we're really at its foundation is still kindness. So if I tend to kind of think about all of us, every one of us on the planet, at our hearts, at our core, really just wants to be happy and free from suffering. And we have a natural wish for that. And that is really that innate kindness that we have as humans, that we just want to be happy. We want to we incline towards ease and joy and happiness. We go about it in some ways sometimes that get us into trouble, but at our heart, at the foundation, is that inclination towards kindness. And so we have it within us. We lose track of it. It gets covered over by various experiences and all kinds of things happen. But at its essence, we radiate kindness to some degree. We have that within us. And when that kindness actually encounters the suffering that's actually a part of life, and if it can stay kind and warm, that's when compassion arises. So it's really the combination of the innate kindness and the natural struggle and suffering and challenge of being human. When those two meet, that's compassion. So when we can stay kind to others and to ourselves in challenging moments, that's compassion. So there's a saying, I've forgotten who said it, but they say something like, when the sunshine of loving kindness meets the tears of suffering, the rainbow of compassion arises. It's a little trite, I suppose, but it gives you the picture. So kindness is the foundation of compassion. And so then it becomes a practical matter, I guess, that we can cultivate, if we can cultivate our own kindness, our own innate tendency to be kind, so that it's there for us when we face the challenges of life, then we're cultivating compassion. Now that sounds kind of simple, and it is kind of simple, but it isn't necessarily easy, as most people have discovered. So, um, yeah, there are challenges in life, and it's hard to stay kind when we face those challenges. But I think the essence of it is that we remember that it's actually a part of our DNA, so to speak. This is who we are. Underneath everything else is this desire, this being desiring to be happy and free from suffering. Now, when we talk about self-compassion, particularly compassion directed at ourselves, including ourselves in the circle of compassion, that's when it really gets tricky, because it seems as though most of us are pretty good at being kind to other people. You know, we can be kind to our friends when they struggle and they have a hard time. You know, we can say, oh, there, you know, I know this is difficult, but I'm here for you. You'll do better next time. You know, I know you have it in you, whatever nice things we might say to someone when they suffer or fail or fall short. Somehow or other, when we do the same thing, which is a human thing to do, to suffer and fail and fall short, we don't seem to be able to muster up that same kind of warmth. We don't seem to be able to access it for a variety of reasons that are probably too lengthy to go into here. But quite often, our response to ourselves is something else, something critical, harsh, unkind, mean. You know, our inner dialogue, our inner critic can often be quite harsh and difficult and painful. So this is what self-compassion and what's wonderful is we can teach people to become more self-compassionate and to slowly shift that inner dialogue to begin to meet ourselves the way we meet others when each of us suffer and fail and fall short. Not an easy thing, but it is a powerful thing.
It really is such a potent recipe for, well, transforming your personal inner landscape, especially when we've maybe been taught differently throughout our lives. And it's so inspiring. It's certainly been my experience that it has changed the way not only I respond to myself, but how this has influenced my ability to listen differently, say to my sons, and to respond with a little bit more mindfulness, a little bit more kindness, a little bit more compassion. When I thought I was quite a compassionate person, when it went in that direction, but something very powerful and subtle has changed even there. Can you explain how that's even possible? You know, that by being kind and compassionate towards myself, then I have more resources for others.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think it has to do with a further factor that I had meant to mention anyway, which is that self-compassion or compassion for others, for that matter, really is comprised of three elements, three components. So the first one would be mindfulness. In other words, awareness of what's here in the moment. So the awareness when we're struggling or another person is struggling, that struggling is actually happening. Because quite often, you know, we may be, you know, you might be in a conversation with your son that's difficult and you're getting upset. And if it's anything like conversations I've had with my son in the past, there are times when you are in the midst of suffering and you have no thought that you are suffering. You are so focused on your point or what that person is doing or what you need to have happen that that you've lost a mindfulness in that moment. You're lost in the reactivity of the moment. And so there's no way you could be compassionate in that moment because your body is activated, your nervous system is activated, you're in fight or flight. There's no sort of calming influence. There's no reaching down and finding that kind part. So mindfulness allows us to, like, in a moment, to notice, wow, this is difficult. Like I'm struggling right now. I'm frustrated, or I'm angry, or I'm hurt, whatever it is. So we need to be able to notice what's going on first and foremost. The second piece is that we recognize that this is a part of being human, what we call common humanity, that we all struggle and suffer sometimes. We don't need to beat ourselves up because we are somehow uniquely bad or weak or stupid or something else because something bad happened or we failed or we fell short. So being able to see that common humanity, to see that this is another human being, although it sounds obvious, you look at your offspring, stopping to see, oh, yeah, he's struggling too, and his behavior is probably driven by his own desire to be happy and free from suffering. It's just not the behavior I wanted from him, or whatever, right? So that awareness, and then bingo, what's called for in that moment when you're noticing this is just two humans being human, is where the kindness comes in. It's like, oh, okay, so could I respond to what's needed here? What do I need? What does he need? But especially, what do I need? Can I be aware? Can I notice it's a human quality? And can I be kind to myself in this moment, not to make it go away, but because it's hard? So I think that the practice of kindness and self-compassion in particular allows us to be more fully who we actually are as humans, not as reactive organisms, but humans with hearts and minds and wishing to be happy and free from suffering. So it allows us to see the other person's struggle and suffering, to see our own, and to meet each other sort of heart to heart in those moments. And nothing else has to change. It's just the change in the relationship we have with that person in that moment where kindness can sprout, so to speak.
Wow, that's just so perfect. It's like a segue in As If You Knew. Barbara has spent the year talking about sprouting. So I think it's over to you, Barbara, all about your seedlings of kindness, which was our theme last year.
Yes, our theme last year was sowing seeds of kindness, and we've carried that on with sort of weekly emails on the theme of cultivating these seedlings. And so I'm really interested, Steve, for your comments for people who feel that this self-kindness and self-compassion is just such foreign terrain that they can't visualize themselves being able to find that self-kindness and self-compassion. And I'm just wondering what words of encouragement you may offer to people who this feels very unfamiliar to.
Yeah, and a lot of people do feel that, especially because so many of us have an inner dialogue and inner space that is uncomfortable, is painful, has a lot of history to it of mistreatment or discomfort or suffering, a lot of feelings of not deserving kindness or compassion. It's heartbreaking, really, when you think about that. But a couple of things might be helpful. The first one being the point I made at the beginning, which is that compassion and kindness are innate capacities that every human being already possesses. This is not a thing to be learned from the outside. It's something to be cultivated from the inside. You already have that seedling. Everyone is born with it. We've cultivated it at times. It's always been there. It just hasn't been sort of accessed, or maybe it's been sort of pushed down, or maybe it's been crowded out by the weeds of suffering, of trauma, of harsh treatment by others or whatever. And so really what we're doing is clearing away the weeds and giving it a little bit of space. But if there is a part of you that is, if you're saying to yourself, I can't learn self-compassion, or I just can't do this, and there is some degree of struggle about that in your heart, like I want to, but I can't. So what if you, in that moment, pause long enough to notice? So there are at least two parts of you inside. There is the part that's telling you you don't deserve this, you can't do this, whatever. But there's a part of you that wants it, right? That's why there's a conflict. That's why you're even vocalizing this is because two things are bumping into each other, and the louder one is the one that's saying, you can't do this, you have no business trying this, whatever, you don't deserve it. But if there wasn't another part, you wouldn't be bringing it up. In other words, there is a part that says, wait, like maybe I do deserve something. Maybe, I don't need to be special or above everyone else or anything unusual, but I wish there's some part of me that wishes to be happy and free from suffering. It's that kinder, warmer part. It's already in there. It's quiet. You can barely hear it. It's that little seedling that's being overshadowed by all the weeds, but it's there. And so your job is not to learn some new thing. Your job is to give it some space. And you don't even have to get rid of the weeds. You can just water the seedling, so to speak. And the way to do it, if to continue the seedling analogy, you don't take a bucket of water and dump it on the little seedling and expect that it's going to sprout into a tall tree, overnight, right? It needs careful, gentle, slow and steady tending, little dropperfuls of water, not buckets. So the same is true for cultivating that little voice. If you're, quote, trying to practice self-compassion, in these moments, I always like to quote Yoda from Star Wars, who says, do or not do, there is no try. So we don't really have to try it. We just do it. We practice it, and then we see what happens. And so if you're practicing self-compassion, if you're saying, dear, this is really difficult to yourself when you're having a hard time, and there's some part of you that rejects that pushes that away, that says, no, I can't, I don't deserve that. Maybe you just need to lower the dosage. Maybe there's just a way of kind of offering yourself just a little bit. Maybe it's a bit of an overdose because you're not used to getting compassion. Or maybe, heaven forbid that in the past, there were times when you needed compassion like crazy. And when you tried to get it, you got the opposite of it. You got mistreatment or worse. So going slow, being willing to be a slow learner, to, as a colleague of mine says, walk slowly, go farther, may be the key. So seeing if you can find a pace that works for you, that says, okay, can I tap? I know there is this part of me, because I'm conflicted. There is a part of me that wishes to be happy and free from suffering. It's saying, well, what about me? There's like the inner child or whatever it is. It's looking for compassion, but it's not feeling there yet. Can you just sort of say, I want to give it time to grow. I want to give it space. I'll be patient with myself. If you're 62 years old like me, you might have had 60 years of beating yourself up and being self-critical and having a lot of shame. So probably 5 minutes of self-compassion is not going to reverse that trend, but it starts. You have to start somewhere. So it's in there. Like the fundamental view of self-compassion is that we're just helping you find this capacity that's within you and cultivate this resource that's already there. So you may doubt that it's there. I'm 100% certain it is there,
That's that conviction. I think for people to really be able to hear that, you're 100% certain that it's there, and we are, as teachers, and you've taught so many people, Steve, and I just wonder what has really touched you about introducing this material to people, and what you've observed.
A couple of things stand out for me. One is like, so I've been a psychologist for years. I used to be a psychotherapist as part of my work as a psychologist. And I had to learn a lot of patience, because that process takes a long time for there to be fruits. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's very valuable for so many people. But when I see how quickly people make change and make insights and transform in the practice of self-compassion through the Mindful Self-Compassion program in particular, it's pretty remarkable how how much change happens. I don't want to like overpromise, because it's a slow process. Nonetheless, like I said, it's a lifetime of unlearning, but so much can happen when we just start to like unlock this capacity within us that people discover they have it. And so change happens pretty remarkably. You have to keep practicing it to keep it up, of course, and it's old habits die hard and all of that. So that's one piece. And the other piece is, I've taught self-compassion in, I don't know, maybe 25 different countries or 20 different countries, different cultures, in Asia and South America, in Europe and North America and everywhere. And I haven't been anywhere where this wasn't embraced and celebrated. Different cultures, collective cultures, individualist cultures, it seems like it's a universal thing. And even though it might have a little bit of a different flavor in the collective culture in Asia versus a, more individualistic culture like here in the US, it seems equally transformative. There's not a lot of scientific data yet across cultures, but just to see that, like, you see this look on people's eyes, like, wow, I can do this. Like, this is possible. They're discovering their inner authority that they didn't know that they had. No matter where you go, it's pretty amazing, actually, and inspiring.
It really is. And I know that, we are massive devotees of the Mindful Self-Compassion program. We've witnessed it firsthand so many times. These, as you say, these transformations that, relatively speaking, over a lifetime happen very, very quickly. And I can include myself in that. And I do hear you. It's still a lifetime of undoing. I think or unlearning. I think that's really powerful. And meanwhile, we can still be kind to ourselves, compassionate, that it is a process. So celebrating, certainly celebrating this with you here today on World Kindness Day. Have you got maybe one or two golden nuggets that you can leave with our participants today that maybe they could move towards or pick up and try on for size, that may encourage them to live a more self-compassionate and kind life?
Yeah, that's a lot to ask, but I can.
We know you can do it, Steve. We know.
Thank you. Thank you for your confidence.
I'm sorry, big questions.
Yeah. No, but it's a big question with a small answer in a way, like that. I think that the key, these are all big things, and if you really want to cultivate, a way of being more self-compassionate, probably taking a course like MSC, I'm a little biased, can be helpful, or buying Self-Compassion for Dummies, to be honest. But more importantly, it starts with small things. And if you're willing to just take note throughout your day of moments of struggle, we would use the word suffering, but sometimes that word seems too big. But moments of struggle, moments of difficulty, moments of stress, if you can catch yourself, in other words, notice it. So this is the mindfulness piece, to just notice, wow, this is hard, or I'm struggling, or I'm frustrated. The essence of this is really the self-compassion break that comes from mindful self-compassion. So really just being able to just take note of the little things. The big ones are hard to catch at first because they're so big and so powerful, a really big fight with your partner or something like that. But just, something that is a moment of struggle, a moment of difficulty. So if in those moments, if you could just notice, yeah, wow, I'm struggling. This is a moment of struggle or suffering. And then to say, yeah, well, this is part of being human, right? This is what happens when you are a living, breathing human in relation with other people. Sometimes you have difficult moments, and we all have them. We're all imperfectly human, right? We're perfectly imperfect, as they say. So just noticing this common humanity piece, and then just to say, in this moment, this is the nugget, to be able to have the presence of mind and awareness to say, what do I need right now? could I give myself what I need in this moment? The same way I would for someone else if they were struggling. I'd give them a hug or bring them a cup of tea or just pat them on the back or whatever it might be. Could you find those moments for yourself? The little ones strung together become big ones, and little by little change happens. A colleague just pointed out a really nice analogy to me today, actually, that I've used before. If you think about an ocean liner that's headed from the UK to New York City, as it sets out, if it sets its course and it says it's going in this particular direction, it might not seem like much, but if that course was altered by a half a degree, would be completely unnoticeable here. But by the time you got to the US, you'd be somewhere in like Florida or something, the southern part of the US. So these little shifts that don't seem like very much, like just meeting yourself with kindness in a moment when you're stressed out, you can't open the jar, or you dropped your lunch or whatever it is, little by little over time have big effects, and they build upon each other. So you start small, just like that person who doesn't think they deserve self-compassion. Try the smaller dose and just keep doing it. And then let your experience be the guide. I trust that you'll find what you need, even if you're a little doubtful, but give it a try, test it out. And I think you'll find that over time, it'll make a difference.
Steve, I could just listen to you all day. I really, really could. Thank you so much. And I know that everyone listening today, everyone watching this will have been deeply touched and hopefully inspired to try this on for size if it is new to them, and maybe encourage a few graduates that may have, popped it on the back burner a bit to dust off their practice and to really start bringing it into the forefront of their awareness again. So, this has just been magical for me and Barbara. I know that
absolutely,
we've been so thrilled, really very
pleasure.
excited to have your wisdom and so much real life experience with this work, and all over the world. I found that fascinating that no matter where we are in the world, this work, and I think even more so after the almost 2 years that we've been meeting, even more important. So the big question is, of course, how do they get their own copy of Self-Compassion for Dummies?
My go-to is Amazon, so I'm sure you can find it there. And
brilliant.
Happy to have you find it. And the willingness to pick up a For Dummies book means, it sounds so ironic to say Self-Compassion for Dummies. Like, why would we, want to call ourselves dummies? But in essence, what I realized is that there's a certain humility in saying, oh, I'm in regards to this, I'm a dummy, so to speak, not in a critical way, but just to say, I am open to this. So hopefully it'll be a fun way, because I do try to make it fun, of kind of finding your way into this practice as well.
Fantastic. Well, we will pop the link into the chat, and we'll be sending an email out with all the links as well, but especially to highly recommend this amazing book. There's a lot of experience and research and magic in here. So I am thrilled to bits that you could share some of it today.
Happy to have been here with you.
Thank you so much. That's
all right.
Lovely.
And wishing you a very happy and joyful and peaceful and delightful and celebratory World Kindness Day for you and your family.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Steve.